All right, here we go. Fastest 15 minutes on the internet, fastest 15 minutes in social media. I'm going to go a little bit longer today because I want to get this thing. I've got like several people have asked me like, okay, well, how did you get into Kemetic spirituality, you know, coming from the black church? And so I kind of want to go across that and, you know, and just kind of enlighten you what my path is. Now here's the thing. Don't think that my path is your path. Your path is completely individual. Know thyself, and to thine own self be true. So your pathway, your path to enlightenment is different from my path, is different from every other soul in the universe, is different from everything, every being, everything that's in the universe all has basically what? Its own path. So I want you to really get that and then really understand that that's, you know, that's the deal. All right. So I was just thinking and I was like, well, where do I start with this? Well, when I was young, my dad was like, okay, first of all, my mother was a school teacher. My dad was a former school teacher that ended up in the automobile business. And, you know, he worked for Ford he worked for Ford for basically my childhood and part of my adult life. And then he got his own car dealership. He got his own Ford Lincoln Mercury dealership. But during the process of that, whenever I got in trouble or whenever something went down or something went wrong or whatever, his punishment was always education related. So, but he made me read things that were inherently black. Black Boy, Native Son, Spook Who Sat by the Door, Soul on Ice, all of these books, you know, autobiography of Malcolm X. But there was another book that he never made me read, but it was on the bookshelf, which was the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And so I started reading it, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to be honest, you know, I got to be honest above all things, is that now after I went to law school and I graduated from law school, I never wanted to read anything else again. It's like, you know, it's what a friend of mine said is the law of diminishing returns. After a certain period of time, you know, it just, after a while, it's like, okay, I got all of this, so now I need to convert all this knowledge into wisdom. You know, and wisdom, you have to, you know, work with stuff in order to gain wisdom, or just be enlightened by how other people use knowledge in order to gain wisdom. So after I got out of law school in 2003, I was like, man, I do not want, because, you know, and I tell my kids this all the time, you know, there was a lot of reading. There was like, you know, it's like read 1,200 pages and be ready to talk about it in the morning, that kind of reading. And so, and it's not until like the middle part of your 1L, your first year of law school, that you realize that you need to be in a study group and you don't need to read those whole 1,200 pages, that you should read like 300 and get 4 other people to read 300 and you good. And then y'all sit there and talk about it after everybody is finished reading. Okay, so, you know, that's like one of the methods that you learn in order to make it through law school. But, and then after I went to law school, I decided, okay, well, I'm going to get an MBA and I'm going to get a doctorate and all this other stuff. So I did everything for my doctorate except for defend my thesis. And I got mad. I got mad about defending my thesis because I realized that everything that I had written or read about Christianity was a lie. And that once I started finding out about the origins of Christianity and Islam, that once I learned about those things, I was like, you know, hold up, you know, the stuff that they told us when we were young is not true. It's a lie. And then I got led to Turkey and the Hagia Sophia, where it appears that the Bible and the Quran were both written by the exact same people. You know, it's just that the Bible was to keep Europeans in line, and the and the Quran was to keep Arabs in line, or so-called Arabs, or whatever you want to say. So, and then when I started, reading up on, Alexander, and I won't call him the Great, but when I started reading up on Alexander and Napoleon and all of these people, and I was just like, man, this is crazy. These people lied, And then when I realized that, and then I read about the councils, and I didn't realize, that everybody talks about the Nicene Council, but the Nicene Council wasn't the only council that was convened by the Roman Catholic Church. There were a whole bunch of, they were meeting about this stuff all the time, but it was people who decided this. It was the king, and it was like, and then later on you start realizing that, oh my goodness, Sir Francis Bacon and Shakespeare and all of these other people wrote the New Testament, and it was taken from the Flavian documents and all of this stuff, and you start realizing where all of this stuff comes from, and then you can go back into the papyrus and also into the hieroglyphs, and you can see where they got the stories that are in the Bible and in the Quran. And so, and how they put it all together. So I always tell everybody the Bible and Quran, they are basically books of astrotheology, astrology, etc. They tell you about yourself. They use allegories and different things like that, and parables and everything else in order to explain to you about yourself. Because they knew that, okay, well, they already got this down, but we can't allow people. That's why they shot the noses. Look at my nose, y'all. Look at my nose. That's why they shot the noses off of the artwork. Because they didn't want y'all to realize that these people were black. So as time moved on, and in 325 AD, we know that the council met, they came up with all this stuff, and they decided what the religion would be. And see, back then, you had no choice. You had to be whatever religion the country you lived in decided to be, that's what you had to be. And people were literally killed, murdered, everything. They were threatened with bodily harm on a daily basis, for not following the religion. So when this country was formed, this country, and not by indigenous people to this country, the indigenous people of this country called this country Turtle Island. But when the colonizers, I got to get the words right. When the colonizers came, this is, so basically Europeans on so many levels do not have any right to this land at all. They weren't here first. They didn't discover it. Columbus didn't discover it. There were even white people that discovered it before Columbus. It was just that they were the ones that put it in writing first. And a lot of the same things, and the same thing can be said also, for the Bible and other documents. So that's why we try. I try to go through and tell people, like, look, even though there's all this stuff, but there's too much evidence that people from Africa, which is the cradle of civilization, which is the motherland, which is based on, melanin, alkebulan, is just that all of this stuff is a complete fabrication and a complete lie. And the fact of the matter is that you have been taught this for so long, and that we've been taught this, and I'm not just talking about slavery, I'm talking about thousands of years. We talk about the year 325. We talk about 325 AD. So we're talking about thousands of years. And we're talking about even before that, because before that, they wanted to figure out, well, the colonizers wanted to figure out how to colonize it. And even with the libraries, all of the disciplines, all of the learning disciplines were basically discovered by Africans. Mathematics, the sciences, you know, law, government, all of these things were things that were created by Africans in Africa. Had nothing to do with Europe. Europe is a young place. Africa is like old and ancient. Even when you start talking about Greeks and Romans, all they tried to do was copy what the Africans did. So if that's why if you look at Rome and all the different things, the things that are there, they're copied after the architecture of the Egyptians. But the stuff, look, Heru on the horizon, which would be the Sphinx, since that's the one thing that everybody, you know, can say, well, you know, even people that don't know that much about Al-Kebulon and about Egypt and about Kemet, they can still identify with the Sphinx. And so when you start to realize that scientists, and I ain't talking about black scientists, I'm talking about white folks, discovered that this stuff was there 50,000 years before there was ever any talk about Christ. And then Jesus, you know, the whole Jesus thing, it was all copied after Herod and after Aset and Asar and that whole, the original Trinity, which was the family. So when people come back at you and they're like, oh, you know, this and that thing, well, there's nothing, but what they did was they said that everything that we were studying or everything that we came up with was evil. Just like they made the snake, they turned the serpent into something evil, but the serpent represented your energy rising from your Kundalini. It represented the rise of your power, of your knowledge, and your enlightenment. The further up the snake goes, you know, the more enlightened you become. So, and it representing your energy, your chakra energy. That's all it does. But in the Bible, they didn't tell everybody. And then they used rituals, just like it's an Akashic ritual. Okay, we're gonna eat the flesh and drink the blood of this Jesus. Well, that's a ritual. It's witchcraft. So every time you do that, you bind yourself. You bind yourself up in a stronghold. The same thing is, in all of these things that they do, and all the holidays the high holy days that we celebrate are not high holy days. The high holy days correspond with the movement of the sun, Amun-Ra. They correspond with the movement of the sun, not nothing that we made up, not all these fake, phony, high holy days that are created. Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Thanksgiving, all of those are made up. Those are made up high holy days. Just like Thanksgiving is a ritual to keep the native people of this land down. Because you sit up there and you eat a feast, and think about what you do. It's a ritual. It's ritualistic. So when I started so I could teach y'all a bunch of stuff, but so when I started realizing it all, and I wrote 2 books. I wrote a couple books about Christianity. I wrote one in order to get my PhD, and I wrote the other one just because I wanted people to realize, what was going on within the 10 Commandments. Because even that, all of that stuff is changed so that you can be judged and condemned. It's all about judgment and condemnation. Because if I could, and even, okay, so correspond that with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, you can be made into a slave, what? By violating their law. But that's not what the Most High said. That's not what our God said. And if you go back and you look at all the papyrus and you look at all the hieroglyphs and everything, you can study everything in Kemet, and I guarantee you won't come across jails, you won't come across prisons, you won't come across condemnation. Everything in Kemetic spirituality and Kemetic science is what? It's about balance. It's about balance, weighing your heart against that feather. And it's also about self-control. Because but over time, all of these demonic spirits and demonic influences have been entered into buck breaking camps in the islands where homosexuality was practiced and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying nothing bad about people that are homosexual, so don't take that as what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is these things that were not natural or that were not normal, they were created and they were expounded upon in order to enslave us and in order to keep other people in control. Just like remember the Salem witch hunts, all that kind of stuff, or when you watch movies. And the whole Hollywood and the media and everything else, those are all rituals. They're rituals. You know, they make the Native American, the person that was the people that were here already, they made them out to be savages and evil and witch doctors. And, you know, same thing with whenever they made movies about Africa, they made Tarzan a lily white man swinging from trees in the jungle. And that's as far from the truth as it could be. They nowhere in the world. Look, you could not hide Pharaoh. You could not hide. How could Pharaoh be a white man? And in any historical account or in any historical recollection, there is no white Pharaoh. You know, that's what Alexander the Great wanted to be. And he was turned down. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, Greeks and Romans were so mad at us, because they did not allow people that were what? That were non-human. And I've been through that whole thing before. I got videos on that talking about humankind versus mankind. It's a difference. There is a difference. There are differences in our species. And so when people always say, why are we so forgiving? Why are we so loving? Why are we so kind? Because we're the people of the sun. We're not lined up with that other side where we try to find fault and try to find condemnation. We are now, don't get me wrong, because now we've learned the ways of our masters. And that's why they made us call them master. And that's why they made us call them sir. And that's why they did all those things. They did all those things so that they could reinstill. Remember, words are spells. So we kept on repeating our own to our own detriment, calling people or being renamed by their names. You know, just like the Bible, you know, Mark, Luke, and John and all that. You know, I got a son named John after the Bible. Well, but I didn't name him after the Bible. Let me clear that up. I named him after his grandfather. I'm sorry, after his great-grandfather, who was an entrepreneur and a great man. So that's why a lot of these things are tough to break, because there's always talk, you know, in the church, the black church just has vernacular. It has things that everybody is taught to say, but there's no power in it. You know, oh yeah, you know, like the thing about generational curses. You can't break a generational curse that you keep on performing rituals to. Just like in Passover, the whole Passover, Easter, all of that kind of stuff, all of that we're actually celebrating the murder of Africans. That's what that is. They went in and they killed the firstborn of what? Egypt. If they killed the firstborn of Egypt, guess what? That was us. So how you going to break a generational curse that you keep on enforcing? That you keep on, that every year, you know, and then they break it down to fool you because they give you candy and Easter eggs and bunnies and rabbits and, you know, bunny rabbits and chicks. And the, you know, and it's all to fool you into fake rituals. So that's why I came out of the church, because once I found out what you know, the true essence of rituals really was, and you know, and then all these people, they come up, like I said, they tell us that the things that we do are evil, but they're not, because they're doing the same things. Do not believe that the Roman Catholic, why do you think the Roman Catholic Church, and look, none of their people went to jail. They're performing sodomy on young people. That's what's going on. And none of them are going to jail for it. Bill Cosby in jail, but you got literally hundreds of Catholic priests that are walking free that are guilty as sin. I just want you to open your mind and to expand your mind. And so that's why, and as time went on, my mother got us into an extended family called Umoja Abagunde, which is Swahili. And part of the thing is, so we started celebrating Kwanzaa. So we didn't really, and so Christmas and all of that, because, you know, just like Santa Claus and all those things, those are all rituals. Those are all, you know, those are idols. Those are things that we, you know, because that's not how it went. And all it is supposed to be the celebration of winter. Once again, the cycles of the sun and the moon. Nothing else. But all of a sudden we got reindeer, we got a jolly old elf, we got an elf, you know, Santa's an elf. I mean, think about it. Y'all got, and the thing is that, and then throughout everything, and then Halloween, supposed to celebrate, you know, so we supposed to celebrate the harvest by doing something that's evil and that's demonic. All Hallows Eve, and then the next night but we don't celebrate the next day, which is All Saints Day. Think. You got to expand your mind, but like I said, most people won't expand their minds because they're in their comfort zone, and most people do not want to get out of their comfort zone. They don't want to go past what they're because the church is comfortable. Now, so then let me just briefly explain about that. So as time went by, I remember shaking my pastor's hand when I was young, and I thought it was like the greatest thing in the world. And, you know, the pastor do you and all this kind of stuff. And my grandmother, you know, she went to the church every Sunday, and she cooked breakfast for people in the church and all that kind of stuff. You know, it was like, you know, one of those type of deals. You know, whenever church was going, you know, that's how it was. So I guess that's what I remember growing up, is she used to take us to church with her. And my mother used to go to church too. But then once she got into this extended family, and we started learning about our African culture and our African history and who we really were, that started becoming less and less. And then I remember, so then how I really got back into it, I started working on the radio when I was 13 years old. And I did radio all throughout college, all throughout everything. So I was always on the radio or in television or something. And so I was working for an R&B station, and the R&B station was owned by a bishop in the Church of God in Christ. And so, and literally, one evening after I got off the air, he called me back to the office. He was like, look, I'm getting ready to fire everybody except for you. And I'm getting ready to sell all the stations because I can no longer in good conscience play the music that we played. And this was like right around the time, the Advent, it was like late 80s, early 90s, when hip hop was really busting out. And but the gangster rap has started to take over where the original hip hop going. And so Bishop was like, I can no longer do this. And so he's like, so if you want your job, if you want to keep your job, show up here Monday at 6 a.m. Bye. And he said, bye. And I was like, okay, bye. So I struggled with that thing because I wanted to play the hits, And so, but then I also remember, I had children. So I had mouths to feed. So the fact that I had mouths to feed made me carry my butt to work Monday morning. And I'm like, I don't know nothing about gospel music. I knew some of the artists. I knew James Cleveland, I knew Richard Smallwood and people like that. I know a few people. I didn't know everybody, but, there was a few groups that I knew. And so, Bishop, when I got to the station, I got there about 5 o'clock in the morning because, I wanted to set up some music. And so he had one of his daughters come in and pull out music for me, so that I just followed the list that they made. I was like, okay, I can, and I do my breaks and say what I gotta say. So the second day I go in, it's Tuesday, and I get a phone call from this lady, and she asked me, the first thing she asked me, she's like, it's like a lady, you could tell she was a more mature lady. She wasn't a young girl. She said, are you saved? And I was like, saved from what? What am I trying to be saved from? Because to my recollection at that point in my life, I was a spiritual free agent. And I just lived life. So every day she called me and explained to me about the Bible. And then she gave me certain things in the Bible and asked me, would I read them? And I said, okay, yeah, I read them, because I'm a reader. I like reading. So I remember that from that Wednesday until I got back on the air Monday morning, because I didn't work weekends, but I remember from that Wednesday until I got back on the air Monday morning, I read the entire Bible. And so I'm sitting up there and I'm thinking about it. And so she called me Monday and she said, are you saved? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, according to what this book says, according to this, no, I'm not saved. And so she went into the thing with, what do you want to be? And blah, 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 blah. And so I got saved. Long story short, I got saved. Then later on down the road, I realized that the lady that was calling me, and she called me every day. And so I finally realized that the lady that was calling me every day was actually Bishop's wife, right? And so I told her, I said, I don't know nothing about, Church of God in Christ. I was like, I was raised in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. So I was raised AME. And, because that's the church my grandma went to, and so that's where I went. And then my other grandma, she was a Christian Scientist. My grandfather, my father's father, was a Baptist. He was a deacon. In fact, he not only was that, but he was a deacon. And, so everybody had their own, it was like basically everybody had their own thing going. And then my mother, like I said, my mother was like into African spirituality, unbeknownst to me. And my sister was into spirituality, unbeknownst to me. I mean, not unbeknownst to me, but I mean, I knew that they wasn't like going to church every Sunday and all that kind of stuff. But they were, the best way to put it is, they were moral. They were, and basically even my wife right now, she ain't religious, but she's one of the most moral people that I know. She's not hypocritical or anything like that. She just doesn't believe in harming herself, harming anybody around her or anything like that. And so that's why just like this whole thing, just like the whole thing with Kirk Franklin cussing out his son, but somehow that's in the eyes of Christians, that's he backslid. No, he didn't backslid. He's human. So that's why I went through all this. So I had people, influxing things, and then once I pledged Omega, and I realized like how different each of the brothers was, but there were certain things that under the banner of Omega we could all come together and agree upon, because everybody wasn't the same there, so and I always tell people that I'm like, look, it's not all people like just alike, but it's like people with high aspirations that are doing things in life. And which is more, even though one of our founders, was a Bishop Love was he was a preacher, a pastor. But you don't have to be religious to be a pastor. And so anyway, long story short, but before I started getting into the whole thing with the gospel thing, I was pastoring a church in Atlanta. And I pastored, but they didn't like me because the way I pastored was different. Because I was like, okay, we'll come in here, we give a few minutes to the Bible, but then we're going to go out in the streets and we're going to feed people and we're going to minister to people and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the first time I went out to try to feed somebody in the streets, and this guy said, F Jesus. The first dude I came up on, he was like, F Jesus. Man, how you expect you talk about your Jesus is so great? I'm hungry. Your Jesus gonna feed me? You gonna feed my wife and my children? And which was a legitimate question, big time. A big time legitimate question. And so, and then I started feeding people, and, that took off, took off. And then one day this dude came up to me, and I think that this dude, if there is such thing as an angel, I think this dude was like an angel, because he appeared and he disappeared, and I never saw him again. But he gave me some advice, and I took the advice. And it started, things started changing. So I guess the thing is that spirituality is different from religion. Like religion is just, everything is always one way, and then there's a dividing point. Yes or no. You're guilty. There's a condemnation. There's, even though the scriptures say there's no condemnation to those that are in Christ Jesus, it says all that stuff. Judge not yet, lest he be judged. All the things that it says in the scriptures are total and utter lies and fabrications, because that's not how people are. It's not how you are. It's not. But then when I started to study the netters of Kemet and find out that all they're teaching you about is your nature. Know yourself. Know what you're capable of. And if you know what you're capable of, then it's not so hard, because the hardest thing in the world is for somebody to tell you don't do something. Just like, and I got a lot of kids. I got 7 kids. I got 6 biological and 1 that I raised as my biological child. And I'll just tell you this. When you tell somebody not to do something, 9 times out of 10, they're going to do it. It's true. True story. Don't put your hand in the fire. Man. I'm just saying. So, but if you know that that's, but in the conversely, if you know, you as a person, that you know that all of these things are within my net, or within my nature, within my ability and my purview as being a human being, these are the things that I'm capable of. And you know, then you can really start a dialogue with yourself, which is what meditation is. Then you can start that dialogue within yourself and talk, and like I said, I have this like ongoing conversation with myself. And sometimes I even get angry when other people try to join the conversation, because I'm like, and it's not saying to be egotistical or self-centered or anything like that. It's just saying that, look, if I know that certain things, trigger off certain things, and especially emotion. And the number one emotion that the church tries to make you live by is fear. Well, if you don't do this, then God is going to get you. But spirituality never says that. Spirituality never says if you don't do this, God is going to get you. It just says, look, if you're out of balance, get yourself back into balance. If you're out of balance, get yourself back into balance. Don't go too high, don't go too low. Try to stay, and if you want to vibrate as that, then it's better to vibrate higher than it is to vibrate lower. Because what? Because and all the universal laws are true. No matter what they say, all the chakra energy is true. No matter what they say, it's there. It can be detected. It can be detected. And all of the universal laws are true. Why are they true? Because if you go against them, then it's not God that's going to get you. It's karma. It ain't got nothing to do with somebody up in the sky doing something to you. It's just the way that the world works, the way that the universe works. So anyway, that's how I got into spirituality. Because I realized that all the stuff that was going on in the church was a lie. That people was doing, they was doing worse stuff in the church. When I wasn't in the church, I felt like I was a morally stronger person than I was. When I got out of the church, I felt like I was a morally stronger person. When I studied what the ancestors had, when I honored my elders and honored the ancestors. And I remember going to my final thing. I remember going to my aunt's house, and she had a ancestor altar set up to my great aunt. And so when I started naming my children, but I named them after my elders and my ancestors. I noticed she had like an altar set up. She had a spiritual altar set up towards my great aunt. And that was like one of the first times that I ever, I really saw that, and I knew what it was. She had my great aunt's picture up there. She had the stuff that she liked, when she was in the flesh, when she was in human form, and all of that. And I was like, wow. And she was like, look, I need to talk to her, because there's certain things that she could that she can enlighten me on that I don't know. And I know everybody goes, oh, you're so spooky. No, it's not spooky. Those are your people. Whose blood you think running through your veins? How is it spooky to call on the people that made you? It is just like, did y'all see that thing? It's like, it takes like to get to where you are, it takes like 4,000 people. You have like the blood of like 4,000 people running through your veins. And one thing the Bible says, like I always say, and there, certain parts of the Bible are true. They're just plagiarized, and they're turned, and some of them are turned around so that they're not truthful. But one of the things that it says that the life force, the force of life, is where? It's in the blood. If you bleed out, you're dead. But the blood that's in you comes from your people. Just like that's why they've had like instances of like people who never met their parents, and then they'll meet somebody and they'll say, dang, you act just like your parents. Or you look just, sometimes, I know, because I like right now, I'll look in the mirror and sometimes I look so much like my father. Or then sometimes I'll look in the mirror and I'll look like, I'll look like my grandmother or whatever. And I'll be like, dang, but that's why. The DNA coding and all the stuff that they've discovered, in time, it's all true. That's why they can say you're innocent or you're guilty based on your DNA. Why? Because you got the same DNA that your daddy got, that your mama got. So it ain't got nothing. So that's why those are the people that you really need to really know. And if you didn't get to know them while they were on earth, then get to know them on the other side. Stop talking about people like they're gone. They're not. They're just not in human form, but they are in spiritual form. In their spirit. If you can remember anything that your people said to you, your grandparents, your parents, whatever, if you can remember anything that they said to you, guess what? That's their spirit. That's why we tell you, like, words are powerful. The things that you can remember about them, words are powerful. Words are powerful. As a man thinketh, so is he. As a woman thinketh, so is she. But, and everything out here is to deceive you, to get you to think other than the way of the Most High. All right. Anyway, y'all want to know anything else? Leave me a note. Y'all probably like mad that y'all asked me now, because I could talk all day about this stuff, because it's revealing. So, and that's why I keep telling y'all, listen to the elders and the ancestors. People out here doing all kind of crazy stuff, just so that they could become popular. But there's nothing new under the sun. That's where we get that from. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new under God. God created everything. I should say the Most High. I shouldn't say God. But I say God so that y'all understand what I mean. You are God. Is it not written? That's why one of the first things that you got to learn about anything in that Bible is there's passages in there that say that you're God. But they don't want you to know that, because look, and one of the most brilliant things that I think I've read on the internet since the internet's been around is like, well, if God is so smart, if this God of the Bible is so smart, why didn't he just kill the devil? And then everything would have been, and then we wouldn't have to, oh, but he wants to test you. Why? No, he don't want to test you. He don't want to test you. When you start believing stuff like that, that's ridiculous. The best way to put it is, you are Christ and you are Satan. And it depends, what's the Native American thing. You got two hungry wolves inside of you. One is good and one is evil. And who wins? The one that you feed. that you feed, not nobody else feeds, but the one that you decide to feed. That's who wins. Christ is nothing but your crown chakra, where you receive the scriptures. That the scriptures are written in code. You will receive what? The crown of life when you get to that point of enlightenment. But most people, they're not searching for enlightenment. They searching for material stuff in the earth plane. Anyway, that's what it means though to be in the earth but not of the earth or of the world. To be in the world but not be of the world. That's what that means. Because your seventh chakra is not even inside your body. Anyway, I love y'all.